Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Illustration Department podcast. My name is Giuseppe Castellano. In this podcast, I talk to folks in illustration, graphic design, publishing, animation, and other creative fields about their work, the lessons they've learned, and the bumps and bruises they've experienced along the way. In this episode, my guest is one of the nation's most prolific illustrators, Bob Staake. Across a 50-year career, Bob has worked with virtually every kind of client on every kind of project. How did he do it? Some illustrators may not want to hear the answer. Among the topics, Bob shares how his creative approach aligns and differs between editorial and children's book illustration. We talk about why children's books shouldn't have messages or morals, but rather truths and shares. And if you, too, want a 50-year illustration career, Bob and I discuss what it all comes down to. I hope you enjoy our conversation.
You know how to pronounce my name, right?
Bob Staake?
Very good. Very good. Very good. I've heard absolutely everything. I never correct it because it's like, I've heard every machination possible, but congratulations, you got it right.
You know what helps? Listening to 2 or 3 or 4 other podcasts that you've done.
Yeah.
That's my trick. Just do a little bit of research.
Yeah.
Thanks. I mean, you're a first generation American like I am. My parents are Italian. Your parents are German. I mean, we can get into all of that, but that's not why I have you here. I want to talk a little bit about illustration instead. Right. How close are you to the Edward Gorey Museum, by the way?
I'm really not. I'm close in terms of geographically. I unfortunately did not get to meet him because he died just when we had moved here full time to this house. And so that was really unfortunate. I've done donations and stuff like that for fundraisers. But what was this thing you mentioned? It was like a birthday party or something like that?
Yeah, I was going to ask you. There's a Gorey's 100th birthday bash coming up in a couple of weeks as of this recording.
See, I didn't. That shows how close I am to this group. I haven't heard a thing about it. I know I'm on their mailing list, but it's so sporadic. It's like, I just feel like I'm completely out of the loop. And then like 2 years later, I'll get an email about some auction or something like that.
Well,
so
I stumbled upon that. I don't know if I'm allowed to say the Cape if I don't live there.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I'm coming up.
If you really want to impress people, call it the Cod instead of the Cape.
That sounds dirty to me.
Yeah, it does. It does. Well, I'm up to. Okay. We won't go there. So what are you going to do? Just up here for vacation, visit, or what?
No, a friend of mine. It's me and 2 of my friends. Mm-hmm. One's an art director in publishing. I'm a former art director in publishing, and the other is an author and illustrator. And obviously, all 3 of us are fans of yours. We're also fans of Gorey's, especially my one friend whose birthday is around that time. So we're going to go up for his birthday, attend the bash, see the museum. I think the museum might be closed, but we're at least attend the bash.
Yeah, I know. That's why it surprised me when you said this, because the last email I got from them was maybe about 2 months ago saying that we're closed for, we'll see you in the spring.
Yeah, they open in April. Yeah. Well, hey.
Well, now I'm gonna have to research this.
Please do.
Maybe I'll see you there.
I would love to see you there. That would be fun.
Yeah, it's such a cool little place.
Yeah, I've never been. Can't wait.
You haven't been? Yeah. There's some really cool stuff. It's, but I think they just do this whole thing on like a shoestring budget.
Feels like that.
But, more credit to them that, they're keeping on his, his legacy. I mean, they do a good job with that.
Exactly. So. Is it true that you're responsible for giving Photoshop its name?
I can tell you a great story about that. I was in a meeting at Random House before a book tour, and we were all having lunch. There was about 30 people in there. We're all sitting around having our sandwiches and stuff like that. And an illustrator friend says, he says, Bob, is it true that he asked the exact same question? I just laughed and I just said, no, the reason I put that there is because it's impossible to vet. It's just so stupid. And that's when I started adding more things, like my grandfather invented the crinkle cut French fry.
I believe that.
And all. So yeah, well, that one's real. Okay, I just started putting all these things in there, and then I had like this little bit of code on my site there where it's like it would randomly load a new weird fact.
Right.
My grandmother was one of the original flying Walendas, and I just kept going on riffing like crazy. So make people think. I mean, who else is going to claim that? It's like,
I guess. Well, no one.
Someone had to name it.
Badly, I might add.
Exactly. I don't know what version. I still work in Photoshop 3, so it's like. But when that loads, you see all these credits on the opening page, and there's like 18 people that they list who worked on the app, and it's like they don't do that anymore.
Yeah, when I first started my publishing journey, this was an internship in Baltimore doing junk mail. Mm-hmm. I was working in Quark 4 or 3 and Photoshop 2 or 3. Yeah, back in 98, I want to say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm glad you didn't name it because the person who named it did not do a good job. I mean, it's not the greatest. Right. There's nothing Photoshop.
Yeah.
Photoshop isn't accurate. Adobe Illustrator is even worse.
So you're saying I should reconsider my bullshit, is what you're saying. Do I say that, I'm the guy who named it Quark? I mean, nobody knows it. You and I are the only people on the planet now, I think, who know what Quark is.
Maybe it would be more believable.
Yeah, okay.
Anyway.
I'll work on that one.
All right, go for it. I don't know if you'd want to link your name to Adobe's sort of naming conventions. Because again, Illustrator is terrible. It doesn't make any sense. It should be called, they missed it. It was a low-hanging fruit, Adobe Vector. It sounds great. It is what it is.
Yeah, that is good. That is good.
Thank you.
Procreate's pretty good.
Procreate's good.
I think in terms of it,
naming.
I've tried it all of one time, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Fresco is the worst. Adobe Fresco. Like why
Adobe Fresco? Yeah, which one is that?
It's a painting. It's a painting program.
Painting?
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's why it's Fresco. They didn't want to name it Pentimento.
What's that?
Pentimento is the underpainting of a painting that I believe, like on a fresco. I think that sometimes they're just paint. I believe so.
My Renaissance painting techniques teacher just turned over in his grave. No, he's still alive.
Yeah, I was going to say, with a name like Giuseppe, you ought to be schooling me.
I thought I knew some stuff. I guess not. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing fresh about it either, and there's nothing about lime plaster. It was Adobe Canvas not available. Anyway, let's talk about you instead.
Okay.
When you first started, obviously Adobe wasn't in the picture. I don't think I was in the picture. Your first foray into illustration was in 75.
Yeah.
Was that the NFL job?
Oh, you had done your research.
I have done a ton of research on you.
But it's even earlier than that, because I started doing... I grew up in Southern California, in suburbs of Los Angeles, Torrance, Redondo Beach. I was born in Santa Monica. And when we moved to Torrance, we lived right around the corner from the Daily Breeze, which was the local daily newspaper. Mm-hmm. I was like a sophomore in high school. This is like 73. I was really into sports cartoons. That's when you had these things called sports cartoons,
right,
in your daily newspaper. So I started doing some of these, and I walked up there and I took these, like the Ali Foreman fight or something like that. I did this big cartoon and talked to the sports editor and showed it to him, and then next day, to my surprise, it's published in the paper. So,
yep.
They weren't paying me anything. It's like, this is incredible. And, everybody at school was just like, amazed. My high school was amazed that I was, getting published in like a paper. So, and then, so my first job just happened to be, I got a call from the publisher of NFL publications on Wilshire in Los Angeles. And he asked, can I speak to Bob Staake? I said, I'm Bob Staake. He said, no, I'm talking about your dad. And I said, my dad's name is Al.
Yep.
It's like, wait a minute. Let me, are you the guy doing these sports cartoons in the Daily Breeze? Because the publisher lived in Palos Verdes, which is in the South Bay as well. And so he saw these things, and he could have very easily said, you're a 16-year-old kid. I made a big mistake. But he didn't. He had me come down to their offices, and he said, I think I'll have an assignment for you. And he gives me this manuscript to read, and I didn't know what a manuscript was. And he wrote down on a little piece of paper what he's going to pay me, $400 for for 3 color illustrations. This is before, I had never had anything published in color before. I was a little bit miffed because I thought if I accepted the money, which like $400 to a 16-year-old kid then was like a fortune, right. I thought, I'm going to lose my amateur status, So
right.
that was my concern. I don't know if you want to pay me here.
Right. This was late enough that you didn't have to separate your illustrations.
No.
Okay.
No. It was pen and ink with watercolor and Prismacolor.
Gotcha.
I mean, that's the way I worked for years. Looked very, very Mad Magazine.
Right. After college, because you went to USC and you didn't study illustration.
Right.
Well, once you settled into your 50-year-long freelance career for real, what were those first months or even years like for you? Bumpy rides, smooth sailing. Were you throwing darts at a moving dartboard while blindfolded?
No, it was weird. Growing up in Los Angeles, it's like in a big city you get a lot of options, and it's like I never had to promote or anything. I would just I would get these calls from I don't know. I mean, it's like. Mm-hmm. I don't know how they found me, but through word of mouth or something like that. I remember I did one time. I got a call from there was an agency called Seiniger and Associates on Wilshire in Beverly Hills, and they were the guys who handled all the movie posters for Warner Brothers, Paramount, Universal, everything. They would get the gig to do the poster for the new James Caan, Diane Keaton, Ellie Gould movie. And they would bring in 6 established illustrators who would do these, you'd have to work on site at their office, and they'd put you in this art room, and they'd give you vellum and everything and reference photos and stuff. And you would have to come up with your concepts, your comps on the spot and render them out,
All right.
And there were it was like, I worked like next to Drew Struzan and people like this, guys
goodness.
who I had I remember him taking me aside and saying, don't make it so rough. They want a little more finished. And it's like, okay, I didn't know what the hell I was doing, but then they pay this big check at the end of the day, and it just kind of happened that there was always work. Somehow I was always getting work. It's not to say that I did work that I really wanted to do. I remember there was a point at which, it was like a precursor to like Best Buy. It was a company called Federated. Mm-hmm. Federated was like a discount electronics store. Mm-hmm. And I remember on Saturdays, I had this job where I had to go into this advertising agency, and I'd have to sit at this desk, and I would have to take these photographs of like stereo components or equalizers and shit like this. And I'd have to put down a piece of vellum, and I'd have to trace it and create a line drawing of it because they couldn't do like a halftone. So those ads that would say, Sunday, 50% off, buy one, get one free, that sort of stuff. And when I think about it now, it's like, why did I do that? How did they find me? And what the hell was I even doing? So ill-equipped to do this.
Your work has been described as, and I quote, whimsical, quirky, retro, and I could go way on and on. So many descriptions of your work in the positive. I mean, David Rebnick said of one of the New Yorker covers that you did, which I don't remember which one it was, he called it unsurpassable. What do you think of your work? How would you describe it? Because it's described by everyone else as all of these great things. I'm just curious to know what you think of it.
Oh, man. I really don't know. I mean, I've just been doing this for so long that it's just part of who you are and what you do,
right,
to where I don't even think about it.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing also, you have to understand that I have different objectives in every project that I work on. Whether you're working in book publishing or newspaper illustration or magazine illustration or advertising or greeting cards or animation, whatever, there's different sets of rules within all those sub-worlds, okay?
Right.
So it really requires you to be nimble. I mean, what I try and do with a children's book is a hell of a lot different than what I do in an advertising campaign, okay? Mm-hmm. So for me to go ahead and attach adjectives to what it is I do. I can do that in each individual world, I suppose, if I cared to. But in general terms, I really can't because they are different worlds.
Gotcha.
I can say that I think my strength is to know my role as an illustrator. I mean, my job is really to go ahead and grab your eyeballs. That's what a good illustrator does. And when it comes to illustrating a magazine piece, my role is to create a piece of art that you look at in this clutter of pop culture and imagery and all these things screaming for your attention. And you look at that image and you say, what the fuck is going on here?
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, if I get you to do that, and I get you then to read the headline and try and pull the two things together, and if that doesn't work, then I get you to read the lead, and then all of a sudden it's like, then you can suss the things together. It's like, oh, I get it. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
And then if I engage that reader to go further, then I have done my job. If I can get them to read 10 words into the manuscript, I have done my job.
Right.
I understand that, and I accept that, but that's my journalism training. Okay, I don't think that's what they teach you in art school.
Mm-hmm.
The purpose of the imagery that I create is to engender some other reaction, other than just like, wow, that guy can really draw.
Right.
Wow, that guy uses incredible color. That's secondary to me.
Is it more important to you? How do I phrase this question? What's more important to you? Your client likes your work. Let's say one piece. Let's just say one piece. Let's say it's, let's be more specific because you've done literally everything for everybody. Magazine piece. What's more important to you? The client likes your piece or you do?
I'm a little more comfortable in saying that both I and the editor or the art director of the magazine are going to be equally pleased. There's not going to be a lot of nitpicking from an editor, from an art director, whatever. Right. Because I know what they're looking for, because I know how to do this. I've been doing this for 50 years. I know how to go ahead and illustrate a manuscript.
Right.
So I don't have to really worry about that. I do have to worry about keeping an advertising client happy, and that's why I turned down, and I turned down often advertising work, and I hate doing advertising work. Mm-hmm. Do I care more about pleasing myself or the client? I know I'm not going to please myself working in advertising. I just won't, because it's always going to be so overly art directed and so ridiculously, the notes are going to be completely stupid. Right. I don't like that world, so I don't give a rat's ass if they're happy. Mm-hmm. I'd prefer just not doing the work, period. Okay?
Yep.
Book publishing, when I'm left to being in my studio alone and exercising my powers as a visual thinker, that's when I do my best stuff. When I do books, I am out to please myself, okay? Mm-hmm. Every time I sit down and do a book, I think, what would little 6-year-old Bobby Staake of Redondo Beach, California, want to see in a children's book? Yeah. And if I do that, I know I've done a good job.
Got it. It sounds as if you've kind of transcended, and maybe this never really was a struggle for you. I mentor a lot of illustrators day to day, and mm-hmm. It's a struggle for them, for sure, and I'm included in that boat. Where, the stuff I do, I hem and haw over it. And do I like it? Do I not like it? I was talking to an illustrator today who is really struggling with this sense of notion of style and whether or not she likes what she's doing, even though what she's doing is very good. She has a sort of an idea in her head about how it's supposed to look, and she's not getting it there yet, or at least she doesn't mm-hmm. think she is. I told her she is. She's not seeing it. So we're working that out. A lot of illustrators have the same experience where they create something and they're just not happy with it for whatever reason. But it sounds as if you kind of transcend that, or you circumvent that. You do the work, you know what you need to be doing, you know you're going to do a good job, and you just rattle them off. So am I hitting on something there, or am I going off the rails?
No, I think you're there. I think there's a great level of, again, I've done this so long. It's like I'm a pragmatist at heart. I really am. Mm-hmm. I know what my role is. I know what I want to do. I know I'm competent at doing it. I think I draw better at 67 than I ever did.
Unsurprising.
I've seen illustrators my age still doing work. And I just think, oh, dude, give this up. You have not grown up in 50 years of doing this. Mm-hmm. It's the same old stuff. It's boring as hell. You had your time. Now move on or do something different.
Right.
For me, illustration is problem solving. For me, illustration is like when I get an assignment and they say, I'll send you the manuscript. I'll say, just tell me the headline. Do you have a headline yet? And if they have a headline, it's like, great, that's all I need. Mm-hmm. But when I sit down to come up with visual concepts, and I'll come up with a lot of stuff. I mean, I could come up with anywhere from 2 to 5 to 10 thumbnail sketches in various stages of completion, but they all inform the next one. So like the third one, it's like, that's not really there, but it pushes you, and you know this process.
Sure.
You just keep pushing along, and then you eventually stumble on something, and you keep going because you think you have something, but you have to keep going to see if there's something a little bit better. And if there isn't, it's like, okay, I was right. My first piece, my first concept, my second concept, whatever, that's the way to go. But there's a lot of times when I will come up with a concept that is really strong, and I believe in illustration, certainly a magazine or editorial illustration is 95% idea, 5% illustration. Mm-hmm. That's the way I was taught when I was doing editorial cartoons. But when I do a sketch that I think is really, really strong conceptually, it's like, well, this is kind of out of my ball. I don't really do this type of stuff visually. When I anticipate, okay, how am I going to take, if they approve this thing, mm-hmm. how am I going to take this thing to finish? Okay. My New Yorker cover, the reflection cover,
right.
With the Lincoln Memorial, that was a perfect case where it's like, I sat down and I came up with ideas for the cover. I thought they had something in the bag about Obama's victory, and they said, no, we need something. And it's like, I just sat down and I thought, wow, okay, let's see what we do here. And so I played around with it, and then I came up with that cover. They called back 15 minutes later and said, that's it. You've got to, 8:30 in the morning to have the art done. It's like, great. I don't know how to do this. I don't know. I'm not a hyper realist illustrator. Right. You find a way.
Yeah.
But I never get nervous at the drawing table. I never have stress. I never think, oh, how am I, this will never happen.
Bottle that up and sell it.
Well, I just know that experience is a real great teacher because,
yes, it is.
I tell myself, I say, I've been down this path thousands of times. Yeah, this is going to be a challenge and we'll figure it out. But at the end of the day, it's art. This is not brain surgery. I'm not sitting in a hospital operating room, making life or death
right.
decisions here. I'm trying to create a piece of art mm-hmm. on a short deadline.
Yeah, that's why I used to tell my designers when I managed a team at Penguin and everyone's getting all stressed about one thing or another about a children's book. The editorial team, design team, whoever is getting stressed out, guys, this is a children's book. We all need to stop snipping at each other.
Yeah.
We're not saving lives. Relax.
That's exactly what I tell my wife when, she plays pickleball with these people in town. And, it talks about, all the trials and tribulations. And it's fucking pickleball. That's the name of the sport. Chill out. But you're right. I mean, that's the way I look at it with art direction or editorial input or notes for a children's book that, I may write a manuscript 28, 30 times,
right.
trying to keep 5 different editors now happy down the line. One editor loves it, then it's got to get kicked up to the next editor, and she's got to have her input, and then I get the next one.
Welcome to modern publishing.
Right, exactly. And I sit there and I go, it's a fucking children's book. Let's chill out here. It's supposed to be a fun process.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I've been over the years, I've talked to illustrators about like the fundamental, like what is the purpose of this children's book that you're trying to create, right? And what is it? How do you get your head around it? And I often say to them, like, beyond just tell me what this book is about. I used to say that, what can you tell me what the universal message is? And of late, I just keep going back to that word message, and it never really quite sat right. It wasn't the full definition of what I was trying to say. Message isn't the right word. It's really share.
You're right. Yeah. Message is not the right word, but I know what you mean.
Yeah.
You hit the key word, universal. Okay. I don't like to say universal message, but that's really kind of I don't want to say the moral of the story. Okay.
Me neither.
My best books are the ones that hit on a universal truth.
Yes.
That becomes subjective. The word truth. For me, it is a universal truth that less is more. That's the story of the donut chef. The red lemon is don't judge a book by its cover.
Exactly.
Okay. Bluebird is we're in this together. It can be reduced down to something so basic like that. It may be missed by, it's not so didactic in your face as you're looking at the book.
Right.
But when you read it as an adult, usually an adult, it's adults that read children's books.
And buy them.
Yeah, and we can have a discussion about that because that's very important. But when you come away from a story, have you been able to go ahead and pull something from it that was not hammered down your throat? I mean, anytime I have a quote unquote message like that, I try and back off of it and just kind of trust that the reader is going to see what I see here in the story.
A perfect example of that would be Ferdinand. Ferdinand is no one gets to tell you who you are but you.
Right.
The text doesn't say at the end, and therefore, kids, don't let anyone else define you.
Yeah, right.
The truth is there. You just have to pay attention to it. And it's not, again, like you said, it's not being shoved down your throat.
When people used to ask me, interviewers would ask, how would you sum up your children's books? And I'd say, well, they're all completely different, but I'd say the common thread within them is I'd like a reader to look at the book and say, boy, all of his books are really clever. They're completely different, but they are clever. They don't talk down. I rely on the reader to, bottom line is if you don't have a reader, you don't have a story. It just dies. It's like a fart in the wind. It just, it evaporates. You need that reader to make it work. So I just, that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for that smart reader who will see the difference and will see something of themselves in whatever the story is. But if the story happens to be silly and completely goofy,
those work too.
That can be clever. That can be smart.
Sure.
I'd like to think that my rhyming books are clever. There's nothing better for me than to enforce upon myself some sort of artistic, some sort of shackle, something that forces me to go down a different path. And when you're writing a manuscript where bulldozer has to rhyme with, I don't know, three nose or whatever it is, who the hell knows? I mean, I notice I didn't pick orange.
Right.
It forces you down alleys that you didn't expect to go down, and that's where the fun happens.
Exactly.
In those type of books.
Right. Speaking of shackles, I don't like the word style, but the question is, has your style ever got in the way of your ideas? So I know that you're not a big style guy. You just do the thing. You just do it. You don't think about style. But I guess the better way of asking that question would be, does the way you work get in the way of your ideas? Has it ever?
I can't think of it because, again, I mean, you kind of answered the question yourself. I think my style, my quote unquote style, it hasn't gotten in the way. If anything, my willingness to go to different sides of my toolbox in creating art has only greatly benefited me, for 50 years.
This podcast is produced by the Illustration Department, a global leader in online education for illustrators. Visit illustrationdept.com for offerings like mentorships and portfolio reviews, testimonials, our alumni showcase, our best-selling Substack, and more. That's illustrationdept.com. And now, back to our conversation. Do your successes, honors, awards, being compared to the Beatles, does that get in the way of your creative process now or ever?
No.
You don't walk into your studio and think, oh God, I have to keep this up now. I think I would. I mean, don't get me wrong. One day I sincerely hope to find out that I get to be that successful and feted and, you know, awarded and all that good stuff. And maybe then I'll be able to answer this question myself. But right now, I would imagine it would stress me out.
No, because I think I've always, you know, I don't have anything to prove to anyone, myself or anyone else. I don't need, on pragmatic levels, I don't need to work. And I continue to work because I like to work. I like a challenge. So, you know, my trick used to be back in the day when I was doing, you know, 15 deadlines a week, I would always go ahead and end the day in the studio with, if I didn't finish the piece, I'd go ahead and I'd have it sitting on the table because it was insurance that I would wake up in the morning and I wouldn't die in my sleep, because it's like, you know, I'm so excited, you know, I'd go to bed, I'm so excited tomorrow because I get to draw like a steam train engine or something like that, something really cool. I get to draw like an alien landing on a planet or something like that, you know. That was always so exciting to me. And I wanted to start my day with just knowing that how lucky am I that I get to do something like this, and that's going to be so cool. I get to draw this or whatever. And then I go in the studio and I do that. And then another assignment comes along, and it's the mystery of it that was always so exciting. It's like, I just don't know what's going to be next. Yeah. You know, we both have artist friends, and, you know, we have artist friends who really kvetch and really, you know, they stress.
I'm in that boat. I'm not gonna take myself out of that group.
That's fair. If you're playing tennis and you're double faulting 3 times in a row, guess what? There's a good chance you're going to double fault a 4th time because you're so rattled. You have no confidence. Your arm is shaking, and that's no different than sitting at the drawing table. You know, if you are scared about putting that brush or mouse or stylus or whatever it is down on that piece of paper or on that screen or something, if you're nervous about that, if you're apprehensive, that's going to show.
Sure.
And the only way to get over that is just to get over it, to make it such a part of your being that it's like, you know, I know how to do this. I know how to draw. You know, I mean, I'll just, you know, boom. I mean, I can tell you what really changed for me, and that was in, I'd say about 1988, but I bought a Xerox machine. The way that I was working was I wasn't doing any penciling out. I would do like a sketch, and I would get that approved, and they would approve it based on, you know, what I would call the spirit of the illustration. This is the spirit of what it will look like, but it was not a really super, super tight sketch.
Right.
And then I would just go straight to pen and ink on paper. And if I didn't like a face or something like that, or an arm or a body or an entire character, I'd draw a new one in pen and ink, no sketching out, take a glue stick and pop it on there. So my originals looked like shit. My pen and inks were just like paste-up boards, okay? And then I would go ahead and I would take that paste-up board and I would put it on the copier, and then I would go ahead and copy a piece of pristine drawing paper through there, and then I would take that and I would paint it with gouache and watercolor and Prismacolor, thinking that, okay, if I fuck this up, all I do is I go ahead and I run another through the machine. That was so liberating that I never once went ahead and had to crunch out another print to paint on. I always knew the safety net was there, so it's like, okay, now I can just have fun painting. I didn't worry about it. I didn't worry about style. I didn't worry about it had to look a certain way. It had to be this. It had to be that. I could just kick back and have a good time. And I mean, ideally, that's what you're getting paid to do, to have, you know, have fun doing what you do.
Right.
That's what I do, and what I do pretty well.
You've earned the right to be at a place where you don't have to care about style or success. You don't have to worry about whether or not you're going to please somebody, because you're at that point in your career where you're just like, I'm doing my thing for myself, and I'm good. But I'm thinking of the illustrator who maybe earlier on in their career, maybe that first book gets a starred review, or they pick up some sequence of successes, and all of a sudden that feeling of, oh God, I have to keep this up now. A piece of theirs gets into a show or whatever it is. That sort of pressure of needing to maintain whatever it is that they're doing. a lot of illustrators I talk to have that problem. Maybe what you're saying is the advice here is get over it. You can do it again.
It's easier said than done. I mean, I think that the impetus to create is something that is so in your soul. It's more important, and I hate to say this, and I've gotten in trouble with it. It's the number one thing that it's just an immovable force that you can't control. It's more important than family. It's more important than sex. It's more important than food. It's more important than you go down the line. And it's horrible to say, but you really have to have that in your soul. And on top of that, when you have it in your soul, there's nothing you can do about it. You are just going to be propelled forward as some sort of crazy beast of an object that you're going to find a way to do this. I mean, if your goal is to go into your studio from 9 to 5 to create and to make a living of this, knock on wood, make a good living at this, you got to really work your ass off. And I sacrificed on so many levels. I had friends of mine who said, you're always working, you're always go, go, go. And it's like, and I used to say back then, I'd say, yeah, I'm doing that now because, I want to be able to relax later, Mm-hmm. I said that just to keep them off my back, even though I was able to go ahead and maybe, relax a little bit and rest on my successes. I didn't, but I didn't have any choice in the matter. It's like there's something so in your soul that propels you to, okay, what's the next challenge? What's the, I did this, but now let's see if I can do that.
Right.
I think you gotta, maybe just work a little bit harder. Maybe, I don't know. It's easy to say. It's so easy to say.
I know. All of it's easy to say. That's the thing. It's all good advice. It's not easy being an illustrator.
No, it's not. Look at it this way. I mean, Tom Brady is really good because he threw a lot of footballs that didn't matter, okay? He would go to practice and he'd throw 1,000 footballs a day, whatever it is, okay? Right. That's just kind of what you have to do. That's how you get experience, so that when it really counts in a game situation, you can throw that 50-yard pass, okay?
Right.
He doesn't sit there and think about, boy, I'd really like to throw that 50-yard pass without doing the work. There's a lot of things that illustrators can do that will go toward helping them kind of figure out how to do this stuff. Reading more is important. Looking is important. A great work ethic is hyper important.
I mean, that piece of advice, work ethic, can engender criticism.
Right. I open myself up to, okay, boomer, yeah, work harder, but you know what? The thing is, it's really true.
Do you still think that, and these are your words, upwards of 85% of children's books published annually are horrible? Or was that a little drama? A little dramatic?
Probably a little drama. I think there are a lot of books that I have in my library here in the studio. I look at with a combination of horror and envy. I look at them and I go, how did this ever get published?
Mm-hmm. I do too, Bob.
And I look at it and I say, why the fuck didn't I get this published? I look at books that way. I think it's always been the case. I think historically, if you look back on children's books and publishing in general, I mean, how many times have you read a novel that is just, it's really not that good? I mean, if we can have good drivers and bad drivers, if we can have good pizza and bad pizza, then we can have good children's books and bad children's books. I mean,
exactly.
It's just, this is not a perfect world.
Also, we were going back to, life as an illustrator is hard, or working as an illustrator is hard. I'm trying to think, is it easy to be an NFL quarterback like Tom Brady? Is it easy to be a mechanic? Is it easy to be an accountant? No. It's not easy to do anything. Anything. Because it requires such a commitment, and it requires there's other stuff. The guy who's working as an accountant, or the guy who's working as a mechanic or whatever, he may want to be out hunting. He may want to be out hiking or fishing or whatever.
or they may have some sort of dream that does not involve auto work whatsoever, or accounting or whatever. And thank God I found something that I love, because I would not survive well in that situation. I wouldn't survive well working in a job that I didn't want to do.
Yeah. I mean, the thing with children's books is it's subjective, and a book gets published and it's illustrated by someone who doesn't know how to illustrate. And that just happens. So don't worry about it. Keep moving with your own stuff. Keep getting your work out there. Honestly, if I look at that as a good thing, I look at that as an encouraging thing. Well, shit, if that piece of crap got published, my chances look pretty good.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I come away looking at the story saying, okay, it looks like a book, smells like a book, quacks like a book, but it's a bad book. I've published 75 plus books. I know a thing or two about this, and I know what makes good ones, and I know what makes bad ones, but I also know that some of the bad ones, I mean, I definitely had some clunkers in there, but if I'm being truly honest, and if I were to pull up the work folder for it, I would see all the notes, and I would see that 100% Bob in the beginning here was really kind of turned into 50% Bob, 50% Random House at the end of the day. That's the way this industry works. The more successful you get at it, all of a sudden, it was described to me by my editor at Random. I said, why are we going through all these notes here? This is crazy. It's like, well, now you're more on this was years ago. You're more on the radar now. So there's more people looking. And so we went from a little fiefdom into, oh, great. So I'm doing better now. So I now get more oversight from 8 different editors,
Let's be a little bit more specific. And then I have a quick question for you about editorial, jumping back over there. I know if I'm asking myself this question, how many hours do you have? Because I have a lot of reasons why a children's book would be considered quote unquote horrible or just bad or not effective or, let's just talk about one. Give me one.
I don't like poorly written stories. I don't like stories that when I read the manuscript, I'll just be so unimpressed. I'll take it in the house and I'll show my wife and I'll say, do me a favor, read this. Tell me what you think. And she'll say, it's terrible. I go, I know, that's why they need me. And I don't say that from a position of ego at all. That's my job. My job is to go ahead and to improve upon that writing in a visual way, to find a symbiotic relationship between text and with art, and to find a way to illustrate that text and to make it better.
So other books are horrible because you didn't illustrate them?
Yeah, right. Okay. Yeah, let's put that into let's get that out there. And
you get canceled immediately. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, but I have also read manuscripts by authors who are not illustrators. No shame. You're a writer. You don't think visually, but for a author illustrator who combines both, I do think visually, and so that's what you need to do in a good picture book. You really need to exploit the power of image, because this thing is called a picture book. Okay, so that's my biggest pet peeve. Now I sound like a real boomer. My pet peeve is picture books that just fail visually, that do not rise to the occasion, that do not exploit the opportunity to really, really go crazy.
Yeah. Can you expand on what you said about your best New Yorker covers being the ones that never made it to print?
I think every New Yorker cover illustrator that I know, all of my friends, we universally agree that our best stuff is, in a sketch pile. Either they're politically incorrect, they're right, inappropriate, they're great jokes that are totally non-PC, or they're just too damn funny, and you have to really straddle a line when you work for a publication like the New Yorker that's on a 7-day schedule. If the cover is news driven, if it isn't what we call an evergreen or a pot boiler, which is a
right idea
that can work in May as it can in June or whatever. Isn't tied to a specific date or event or whatever. But when you're doing covers like that are very timely, you got to be extremely careful, because what you finish on Thursday morning, which then gets teased online on Friday, then on Sunday goes to digital subscribers, and then on Monday is in the print edition. That's 1, 2, 3. That's 4 days where that news can change dramatically. Okay, and the events could completely alter to where that cover that you see on Monday is like, oh God, we really fucked up. This is, the events change so drastically. So that's why you see a lot of ideas that are not really super specific.
Mm-hmm. When you were talking about your first job, I found it interesting because it's, the first big job with the NFL.
Yeah.
Sports related. Your colleague, Barry Blitt, sports had a lot to do with his start. I didn't know that.
Oh
yeah. He showed, I talked to him on the podcast ages ago, so this is going to be, I don't know how accurate this will be, but essentially he was showing drawings to Major League Baseball players at the hotel, like when they were in town. Mm-hmm. He would do drawings of them and show the drawings to the players. And that helped start his career.
Wow.
Yeah. With New Yorker covers, how much of that process is influenced by the potential reader? I'm just trying to think, like, when you're illustrating a children's book, you're clearly thinking about the reader, but I think you're more focused on the story you're trying to tell and hope that the reader connects with it.
Right.
And New Yorker covers, it's the other way around.
Well, the best New Yorker covers, I believe. I think Barry does this. I definitely do this. In that cover, I am providing you with clues, whether it's that the Obama victory cover, the reflection cover of the Lincoln Memorial, or when Ruth Bader Ginsburg died, the collar is weaved in the international sign of woman or whatever. What you're doing is you're providing clues, okay? So that when the reader looks at that image, they're not exactly quite sure what's going on. It's a striking image, but it's like, then they think, well, what is this about? Oh, and then they think about the Obama campaign, or they think about, oh, that's Ruth Bader Ginsburg's jabot, her collar. Then they suss the information together, they connect the dots, and they have what I call an aha moment. And you know what you're doing then as an artist? You're democratizing the illustration process.
Yeah. But
you're giving them ownership. You're saying to them, look, I'm going to do something here in this piece of art that is really, really, really difficult to do, but it requires you as a causal part of the entire process. And I'm trusting you that if I give you the clues, you're going to be able to suss this thing together.
Sure.
And isn't that a wonderful, I mean, we've all had that. I mean, we've had it as fans of illustration, looking at, a New Yorker cover that we weren't quite sure. And then we look at it a little bit longer and it's like, oh, Jesus, that's fucking brilliant.
Oh yeah.
Can you imagine what that's like for somebody to look at a piece of art like that and to be able to go ahead and know that, have the mental infrastructure and knowledge base to bring the whole thing together? That's got to be an overwhelming sensation.
Yeah.
I think it's beautiful.
It is. For illustrators, animators, storytellers, whatever you want to call them, creatives that are listening to this episode, what last word? You've given a ton of advice and insight, even though you may not think you have, but you have. What last word of advice or insight, or even just some encouragement, would you like to share with them directly?
All I can do is I can look at, I answered this question from a position of, this is 50 years later, but I was there 50 years ago and I am here now. But I can tell you that there are times when I let my mind wander and I look at where I've been over 50 years and I think, how the hell was this even possible? The odds are so stacked against people doing this sort of thing. How did this happen? I'm good at what I do. I draw well, I write well. I'm a good creative thinker, but there's a lot of people who are good creative thinkers, How did this happen? And I think, honest to God, it sounds so old man and okay boomer, but honestly, I think it's work ethic, a huge part of it. This was a job, I remember Stephen Cornaccia, illustrator,
Sure.
who now I think teaches at Parsons or something like that.
I
remember him telling me at one point that when he started freelancing, he would go into a studio and he'd have like a coat and tie. I'm not that crazy.
That sounds like him.
I'm lucky to be wearing pants in here. I mean, I did go through a period in my studio. My studio used to be 6 miles from my house, and I did get to a point where I was putting on like a sports coat, and it's like I didn't get out a pipe or anything like this, and put on an ascot or anything like. I know
you're in the right spot.
Things would have really made a difference if I had done that. No, I just worked my ass off. I just kept hammering and hammering and hammering. And a lot of the stuff I was doing was like square peg into round hole stuff. I did for the longest time. I used to get this call from Hallmark Cards all the time, like in the early 90s. They would always call for my portfolio. This is back in the day when you had physical portfolios.
Right.
They have a portfolio review and look at my stuff, and it's like, okay, fine. I'd send it to anybody who wanted anything. And they'd send it back the next day by FedEx, and they'd say, thank you very much, but, blah, blah, blah. And then the next year they'd call up again, they'd call in the portfolio, and they'd look at it and stuff. And then one year, maybe about 3 times later, they said, congratulations, you're now part of the Hallmark freelance pool, and we'll be calling you with assignments, blah, blah, and we'll pay you, 10 cents on the dollar for everything that you do. And so I did a ton of stuff for Hallmark. But at one point, art director told me, they said, we always wanted to work with you. We just thought that, your characters with the bug eyes and the ice cream cone noses and stuff like this, they would just, it wouldn't work, on a consumer level, that people would freak out and stuff. It just kind of dawned on me. I thought, well, what changed? I wasn't changing the way that I was drawing. I was still drawing the same way, ice cream cone noses and big bulging eyes back then. And so it taught me a lesson. It taught me to remain true to who I was as an artist. Mm-hmm. It's like, boy, you would, if you just did this, we'd send you all this work. If you could just go ahead and make their noses pug noses and their eyes slits or something like this, and that would be really tempting, right? Thank God that didn't happen, but I just maintained what I was doing, and the market kind of came around to me as opposed to me coming around for the market. Mm-hmm. Again, easy to say because I was always busy. My hands were always busy in so many different pieces of pie trying to get this, do that, or whatever. So I was always taking a boiling pot of spaghetti and throwing it against the wall and seeing if it could stick, and eventually it's going to stick.
To learn more about Bob, visit bobstack.com. If you find value in this podcast, consider supporting it via our best-selling Substack or Patreon. While each offer different benefits, both provide access to dozens of exclusive episodes we call Extra Credit. You can find links to both on our website or show notes. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.